You are now entering the Take Up, a place to gather when the film is over. I'm your host, Joshua Ray, and I'm here with my co-host. That is the managing editor of the TakeUp.com, Andrew Wyatt. Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
Every episode, we decide if one film gets to enter the Take Up's canon. And on this episode, we have a very special guest. That is Emile Parseghian, and he has chosen Jean-Pierre Melville's Army of Shadows. And then after that, we'll have one more thing. Andrew, I know you're dealing with a heat wave. We just came out of a heat wave. But we had a lovely time. I got to see this film with my guest last night and watched it with a bunch of French people. So I had the 4DX experience. I'm sorry, you probably had like 5DX in sweltering heat and just really the pressure cooker of it. Hi, Emile.
Hi.
Emile Parseghian. See, I did it.
No,
I
it's
did it.
fine. It's fine. It's getting better.
It's
So
fine. It's getting
Mm.
better all the time. Hi, Emile. Emile's a
Hi.
French filmmaker, a friend of mine. I want to talk a little bit about the film that you have kind of in circulation at festivals right now. Can you tell us a little bit about it before we get into your choice? And that I think we can talk if there's similarities in your filmmaking between this and your film.
Yeah, sure. So I just finished a couple of months back my first professionally short film, which is called Forzo's, Pourceau in French. It's actually a movie that we shot in Armenia because I'm half Armenian from my dad's side. Um, and we have the premiere in Armenia in 10 days now. In the Golden Apricot Festival over there, which is like big like regional festival for the Middle East and the entire region, the Caucasus. Yeah, and it's a movie which is also about war, more so the consequence of war and like the 2020 conflict that took place between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So yeah, of course, a lot of similarities, I guess, and Melville especially was, I think, of he's one of my favorite filmmakers, but I think he's also one that I relate to a lot in my work. I'm trying not to be as much as an awful director with my crew as he was, because he had a terrible reputation of being really like
I heard he was a bit of an
yeah.
asshole.
But it's very complicated because like last year in France, actually, a book was released by his assistant director on the Red Circle. And it's really fascinating
Mm,
because you get he was as much of an asshole as he was like a very endearing man and a very caring. So
mm.
he was a very complicated character. So yeah,
I think my idea of who he is without having any other context is like this kind of avuncular, older, like one generation above the new wave dudes, and like just the cool guy sitting at the airport when Gene Seberg
yeah,
is interviewing him breathless. Like, but I think he's a pretty complicated man, and we can definitely get into that. But okay, so you've chosen Army of Shadows, which it has a really weird release. We actually got into it in our last episode because we talked about Charles Burnett's Killer of Sheep, which had this huge restoration and proper release, really about 30 years after its initial premiere. And that was kind of the same for Army of Shadows. I didn't find the exact date, but it was around the same time.
yeah,
And it was celebrated, at least in the States, as this like huge discovery because Melville is a director that we know and that, you know, those of us who are cinephiles know his work. But that one is, and we'll talk about it. This one is so special. It's somewhat of an outlier, but also you can see him at work in it. Andrew, what's your relationship to it? Did you first see it when it was like properly released here in the States?
No, this is the first time I've seen this one, and My relationship with the movie is, just the bigs. So I've seen The Samurai and, The Red Circle, and that's it. So this is my 3rd feature of his that I've been, introduced to, and I recall, loving those films. Red Circle in particular, I think, left a really strong impression on me in terms of it's one of those things where you go back and you watch something that has become an iconic, and I guess The Samurai maybe even more so, but I kinda prefer Red
Yeah,
Circle. Becoming
me too.
iconic exemplars of the form and genre, and you don't until you go back and watch them, you're not really aware of how outsized their influence is, and you watch it and you go, "Oh, this is where all that comes from. Okay, I get it now."
Uh-huh. There are specific filmmakers, modern, or I should say contemporary filmmakers, because I would say that he is a modern filmmaker, um,
Mhm,
that owe so much to his filmmaking. I was thinking, watching this last night, I was thinking a lot about David Fincher and the way
mm,
Fincher, like, strips away, even, like, through his process, strips away, I won't say artifice, but kind of like, it reminds me of another filmmaker, Robert Bresson, in that he's just, like, working at it, working at it, working at it until it's kind of nothing. It's, like, minimal, bare minimum.
mhm.
But anyway, Emile, why Army of Shadows? Why not Le Cercle Rouge or Samurai
Uh,
or I don't know, what's, Léon Morin, which I recently
yeah,
saw for the first time? Oh my god, what a horny fucking movie that anyway,
yeah.
yeah, so we can talk about his resistance films and then his crime films and what the crossover is, but why this one in particular?
Mm, it's a great question because actually I think a couple of years back I would have probably picked, probably Samurai, but it's like, it's choosing between your favorites. But I saw because I discovered like which is like those big three Melville movies, we can say, when I was a
Mm.
teenager. So maybe when I was like 14, 15, and I just was like, especially like the crime movies to me were like the coolest stuff I could possibly imagine. And La Maison was, Army of Shadows was a bit like a bit under this like level of coolitude for me. So I kind of saw it as a lesser Melville uh, amongst those three ones. But when I saw
And we
it,
should say that you're younger, so
yeah,
so was it in circulation?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, are you talking about the restoration?
No, no, it was in circulation. The American case is we can go back after to that, but it's a very particular case of like how the movie
Mhm.
it was released late in the States because of the way it was received in France at the time, which is a very particular context.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
because like okay, I say it now. Basically, the movie was released in 1969, which is 1 year after the events of May '68,
Mhm.
which led to the downfall of Charles de Gaulle, General de Gaulle. And the movie and Melville himself were pretty firmly like attached to De Gaulle and Gaullist, even though there is like I guess a form of irony about the way De Gaulle is portrayed in the movie. But and so it was really like against what the times were at the time in France. So um, at the time, the
Was the
reception
film
in
itself viewed was the film itself viewed as, like, reactionary or anything
I don't
at the
think so. I
time?
think it's hard to view it as but at least it was viewed as Gaullist at a time where, like, Gaullism was really out of
Mm.
fashion. And so, Cahiers du Cinéma, which used to be, like, huge fans of Melville, as you said, like, the his cameo in Breathless is a great example, actually were really harsh on the movie, and the entire, like, left-wing intelligentsia in France was really harsh on the movie, which I think is, like, once you see the movie maybe with a fresher eyes, don't make a lot of sense.
It
Um,
doesn't make
yeah,
any sense
because
to
of like
me.
I love the
Is it
beginning with the
all
communist
cultural
character.
though?
I think it's it,
Yeah,
it, it,
yeah,
it was a matter of the times, but from what I've
yeah.
understand, the movie wasn't picked up by American distribution because of the very cold like critical reception in France. Like I think at the time for like art house distributors in the States, Cahiers Cinema were like the main reference. Like you had to
They're
pick
taking
the
they're taking
movies.
their lead from
E
them, yeah.
exactly, and since the movie was poorly received in France, from what I've read and gathered, that's the explanation for the very late American release. But in France, the movie was, I guess, because very quickly, like, as the Wilson and everything, I think, people went back to the movie and appreciated it, and it was always like, as far as I can remember and know, remembered as a classic. But there was also the question of the copy, and the restoration, I guess, helped a lot.
Sure.
But so anyway, to go back to what, so it's only when I saw it again, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, in cinemas. There was a cine club on Sunday morning in a cinema next to my flat in Paris. Um, that it really struck me not only as his best movie, but probably my favorite movie of all time, I guess. It's tied with Tarkovsky's Stalker, but it's like 1 and 2, it's on the same level. Um, yeah, because I think it's at the same time, as you said, it's an outlier, even though it's like he did 3 movies about World War II, which were Silence de la Mer, his first one, Léon Morin, Priest, and this one. Um, and at the same time, I think it's very key to understanding the crime movies because, like,
Mm.
Melville himself was a soldier in World War II. He claimed to be a resistance fighter, but there are like dissenting opinion on that, so I won't affirm it as such. But anyway, he was very close to this world, and um, and I think that his fascination for clandestinity and the idea of he has a quote about like everybody that actor should wear a mask and that nobody should be himself, and which I think is really interesting stuff, and that's where he really like moves away from Bresson in a sense. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's the outlier, and to me, it's like the centerpiece of the foundation. And when I saw the other movies again or discovered other parts of the catalog, I always go back to Army of Shadows as being the key to understanding what he did in his entire filmography. So yeah, and rewatching
That's
it again yesterday
yeah,
confirmed it to me.
that's that's so smart because there's so much of this film is played for suspense. And I wanted to point out one particular scene, and we can set up the movie, but there's a whole a sequence where you're meeting someone. Okay, guys, help me refresh my memory. I'm talking about the part where he's translating the encoded message. So
Uh,
there's a lot of kind of lead up
yeah,
to
yeah.
it where you watch someone enter, you're waiting,
Mm,
they sit down, he's looking at this, they're having a long conversation. But Mavi, in the middle of that, he doesn't make you watch someone translate it. And you might think that he would because he is that kind of a director who sits you in a situation in order to build suspense. But he almost jump cuts, I think, to the point where the translation is done. And for it's really showing and telling that he chooses that moment to do that because that's not a cinematic moment, is it? But movement is cinematic. Figures in space is
mm.
cinematic. And that is a way of building tension that I think reveals behavior. And he said, well, cut the fucking translation part out. And I don't know, maybe that sounds stupid of me or like, well,
No,
duh,
I
Josh, of
think you're
course you would cut that out.
no, I think you're dead on, particularly about the motion and, the composition and blocking and the movement of characters around that space. In that sequence, in that, sort of abandoned, almost like burned out farmhouse or manor house that
Yeah.
he's in, um, the whole lead up to that, and then everything that follows that in that space, I think is really interestingly directed in terms of, like, how people are moving around, how new characters enter and leave is really and where
Mhm.
he places them. The whole mise en scene of it is really fascinating and well done. But like, the content everything is swirling around the content of that coded message. It's a very slowly building storm because you know something bad is in there, is in those ciphers.
Yeah, and yesterday that thought I had after watching the movie. I think the movie's relation to suspense is actually really strange and more complicated than it seems. Because, like, in a sense, the movie has no suspense at all. Because for me, from the beginning, is in because it's the case in every Marvel movie, almost that everybody is doomed. Like the
Yes.
way everything
Yeah.
is so desaturated. A French critic I really love, Burdeau, Emile Burdeau, said about an interesting thing about like when you go into prison and people are beat up. The way he shows their bodies, you have no like the blood is already like black, as if they were already cadavers, already dead. Like there is no death is already here and there is no surprise about it. So in a sense, there is no suspense about where all those people are going to end up, which was actually the case for like people on this level of resistance where like life expectancy was really short. But at the same time, there is, and for example, there is no suspense between scenes, as you say. For example, when you understand that Jean-François and Luc are brothers, actually, like the movie could have revealed that much later in the movie. There is no need for it to be revealed so soon. But actually, it's revealed like a scene after, and there is no like overarching suspense about this like twist event. And a lot of stuff is built like that actually. Um, the movie always acts as in like a to me it's like a bunch of blocks, of building blocks. Whereas inside those blocks, there's a bunch of suspense. Like the three escape scenes, the one in the beginning, the one in the failed one in the middle in the hospital, and the later one when he gets up with the rope, are very like tense and suspenseful scenes, which are like wonderfully built. But I think he's not trying to have an overarching suspense, and that actually makes for a very um, strange viewing experience. And the more I watch Melville movies, and the more I think that the perception of Melville as being this very like like a rigid and classical and austere filmmaker is actually like pretty wrong. Because this sense of stretching out scenes, he also applies it to like very trivial moments. I don't know, like in the London scenes, you have a long, long scene when you just see Lino Ventura folding clothes and putting it in and putting it out of the suitcase and stuff. When he runs at the beginning from the Gestapo headquarters, like it's a very, very, very long traveling shot. So everything is stretched out, but he treats like the very menial moments in the same way he would treat like those big like set pieces. Um,
But he also chooses, like, to elide certain things that a different kind of
yeah.
filmmaker might put on screen.
Mm.
There's some brief time jumps and some cuts where it's like, you have to just intuit from the dialogue or in the circumstances what's happened off
Actually,
screen.
do you know how you intuit it? It's by Leto's beard. It's his
Yeah.
facial hair.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not, you can tell the time jumps from that.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, because I think actually like that's the thing that really strikes me is how much trust he has for the viewer. Like it's
Mhm,
very, and the example of the beard is really clear that you understand that everything that he went through, and that actually allows him to like, for example, uh, torture is always implied in the movie, but it's never shown
mhm.
because he really like believes that as
You just get the gruesome after
yeah,
effects
exactly.
on their faces and bodies,
And
yeah.
also because that's interesting because I think at the time, at least when the movie was released in France, those were like very fresh memories, like all the actors in the movie went through the Second World War, not as resistance fighter, but everybody knew what went on. Even though the movie is pretty like forward thinking in terms of like representation of resistance. So yeah, I really feel like it's very, very
Well,
um
Kessel's original novel was
yeah.
written when the war was still going
Yeah.
on, that's what's crazy to
And
me.
Melville read it
So we're
during the
n not
war.
only not only are we not that far out,
Yeah.
that many we're still half a generation from the war. The source novel itself was written during the
Yeah.
war, that's crazy.
And Melville read it in London during the war, and he wanted to adapt it as soon as he read it, but he waited like
Mhm.
Mhm.
25 years to do it. So yeah, he read it before he shot his very first movie. So that's why I think it's also the centerpiece. I think like everything like led to that, and he took his time to be ready and also to have um the proper resources because the movie was actually like pretty expensive. Whereas where you
Would
used
you say
It
would you say this is his opus? I mean, Samurai, I think, is his probably best known, but
yeah.
do you feel like this is the movie that he was building to, that he was that's sort of the centerpiece of his
I think
oeuvre?
so, because also it's at the point in his career where he's like kind of at his peak commercially, like he's even though like Sacre Rouge I think was a bigger success in cinemas. But he's at the point where he's allowed to have big budget. He owns his own studio, which burnt out.
mm.
I don't remember if it was before or right after Army of Shadows. But yeah, I think he was at the point where he has the money to do what he wanted, especially which is like perceptible when you look at the very first shot of the movie, uh, which is like
Well,
symbolically, yeah.
to borrow the parlance of another podcast, it feels very much like a blank check movie.
Mhm.
And because And even in the diegesis or the narrative itself, and the way you've been talking about the way it sort of teases a narrative, but it's not what you think it's going to be. It doesn't follow any kind of
Mm,
traditional trajectory. And what it actually shows is a bunch of cycles of failure and like Sisyphean tasks. And what I didn't realize, and I'd seen this before probably 15 years ago, like around the time of the American release, is that it has this enormous scope that because it is sort of like you said, the building blocks, and each building block is sort of a mission or a set piece, that it can be like what it can feel like one of his crime movies, or at least you might have the expectation of it being like a crime movie because there's a heist in the middle of it. There's all of these kind of like secreting clandestine meetings, and but overall, what can be frustrating, I think, for some people to watch it, and they should be frustrated by it because it's a frustrating subject, right? Is the cycle of failure and no sort of resolution. I mean, this is a film that ends with title cards that said they all died.
mm,
You know, wait, have we said what this movie's fucking about?
yeah,
Did we? They're resistance
No.
fighters. They're all
yeah,
over
Yeah.
France. They're
yeah.
trying. All right.
But
Free
and
France.
that's
Yeah.
actually a really interesting. You never actually see what the resistance work is about. The circle of failure is only
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
their relationships and the way the network kind of falls apart and
Yeah.
everything. But you never see them sabotaging, I don't know, like a train or shooting like German soldiers. It's very much it's hinted at some point. People say, "Ah, I have to do this, I have to do that," but it's very much like off screen. Like it's a
Hmm.
movie about. To me, it's not a movie about resistance. It's a movie about the resistance fighters, and
Hmm.
which is
Yeah.
a very strange
Yeah.
choice to do. Like that's already like
Well,
very surprising.
I like what you said about that it's not that the individual scenes are particular, like, it doesn't have, "Ooh, we're in a suspense scene now." What the vibe that I get is the situation is suspense. Like, the
Hmm.
by the nature of the place and the time and the people that we're focusing on, the entire 2.5 hours of it is one long suspense sequence because to
Yeah.
live like this in constant fear, but also trying to actively, like, hurt the Reich, that's a suspenseful place to be, no matter what's going on. It's suspenseful to walk down the street, and I think Melville, like, emphasizes that, but with by how suddenly things happen, like, people are just walking along and they get shot. People are walking along and they get snatched
Yeah,
like that, and next thing we know, like, "Oh, shit, one of our operatives is in prison, and we're probably never gonna get him out now," and, like, the speed with which things change and hinge makes life in this place and time for these people is a suspenseful situation.
yeah,
We don't, yes, there are sequences like the escapes and the sort of aborted prison rescue and so forth that are maybe more focused on the procedural details of the mechanics of it, if you will.
The
But I
work.
feel like that, yeah, that the whole 2.5 hours is just one long,
mm,
sustained, teeth clenching
Yeah.
suspense.
Like the way I could not handle this, the way I would, and it really depressed me watching it. Not only because in content, like yes, everyone dies, but do I have this kind of will in me? I mean, as someone who like sees the signs and fled to another country, that's
yeah,
not exactly, wrong, what
mm,
I'm saying. Like, do I have the kind of, the will to be able to do something like this? I mean, of
Well,
course, do I even
that's why
have the skill to do anything like this is another
But
question.
that's why the beginning and the introduction of Gerbier as a character is so strong, and,
Mm,
like, it tells us without telling us much about the man, we learn so much about who he is and the kind of will he
yeah,
has by how he moves through spaces, how he talks to the people around him, the way he holds his body, the way he attends to his clothing and his things, his possessions, tells us so much about that character, and we like him already. Like, we know he's probably a hard ass, but we like him right out of the gate because we sense like will to do whatever is necessary in him.
mm.
It's a really great character introduction. That first like 20 minutes is so excellent.
I mean, it's so smart from the source to be about not the head, not some underlings, right? But the second in command, you know, really the one who's making all the work and doing like all of
The
the
COO
Yeah,
of the
administration. Yeah, the
resistance.
COO. That's what's so smart about it.
yeah,
But that his this character, because he doesn't have a readable face.
yeah,
You you do find his kind of working methods, and especially in the end when they all not necessarily betray Mathilde, but maybe actually follow her wishes in killing her. And we can talk about that too. You see that is resolved. That is absolute. That his kind of manifesto is unbreakable, but that's also very clear just by looking at Lino.
yeah. And I think it's interesting that you're talking about the beginning. I also think that the question of like, I think he did this movie at this time also because he was at this point in France. There was a huge fight between basically the Communist Party and the Gaullist Party about like which side was the resistance on, whereas it was much more complex. And also, I think it was also a time where basically everybody claimed to be a resistance fighter. And I think that going back to
Mhm.
what you were saying, Josh, that the movie is a way of reminding like not a lot of people had what it took to be like at this level of like like not only being like like a low level resistance fighter, but being at this level required like some qualities that very few people have. And the end of the movie is pretty realistic. Those people, from a bunch of them, died, so couldn't be here to claim to be a resistance fighter. So I think it's also
Well,
like a reminder from
even
Melville.
within the cell even within the cell that we're seeing, we get that early scene after it comes out of prison and, um, basically
It's the
hunts
kind of
down
the
the guy who
first
pulled him.
thing that they do,
Mm,
you
Yeah, he's like,
know?
"Well, we gotta kill this guy." So even within the cell, there's I forget the guy's name, but there's a younger character who shows up, and so he's sort of like young and hungry. He wants his first mission. And they're like, "Well, your first mission is gonna be to strangle this guy."
yeah.
So, and he doesn't take it well. Like it truly traumatizes them. But like, so even within the cell, there's maybe people who don't necessarily like. There's a spectrum of how hard they are and how willing they are to do what needs to be done,
And
even within this very small group.
even the traitor is pretty brave, like he doesn't try to run
Yeah.
away, he accepts his fate. Like I like you almost made to feel that the traitor is braver than you are. So that's like
Yeah.
No, you're so right. That's what's so kind of cunning about this film is that you could also be kind of confused in that moment in that he's not feeding you the information that you might typically be fed in another by another filmmaker. In this moment, you're like, wait, well, I understood that these are resistance fighters, but the way that they are treating him, but then also his own behavior in this instance is kind of befuddling.
mm,
But it's such a way of doing exposition without doing it at all. It's like you understand the code pretty immediately.
yeah.
And his alighting the violence, I think, is so key because him wanting to make this after the war, I could see a film that is celebratory and a film that might show these people as heroic figures or people who take I mean, they were, but heroes as like superheroes and people who to celebrate, but with a kind of remove, I think you get the necessary distance from it in order to be able to see the complications of doing something like this. But even like if it were to contain that violence, you get the thing that Truffaut's always, or gestured towards is like, any war film is
War,
pro-war
yeah.
because you have this kind of celebration of the act in it. But this film is just so smart and kind of removing that
Yeah.
and maintaining the distance from all that.
And
Because, I mean, you,
The immediacy of it. The
yeah.
immediacy of it.
Emile, don't you, I don't, I will ask this. Silence de la Mer I find kind of in that vein,
yeah.
in that it has a kind of naivete to it. It has a kind of innocence to it, or like a celebration of the will of the resistance. And that's fine. And that could have been very necessary in 1946.
6 year.
But if he had made something like this, then I think we would be talking about a completely different
Mm,
film.
yeah. Yeah, but and still already Silence de la Mer, which is also a book adaptation of a book that was written during the war, so it's very like
Yeah.
there is still the thing that like the German officer is a pretty nice man, which in
Yeah.
1940
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, so
He's an all right dude.
he's never in the simplicity, and I think that's what's really really striking. Um, but I think yeah, both movies are really linked, but and also I think it's the notion of heroism, of course, is present, but his idea of like showing heroism as this very complex stuff, which is not like, which is also linked to like moral ambiguity and complexity. I think is also linked to what I think he does very like subtly, but like you basically the movie shows anytime a resistance fighter is named by political affiliation, you have a Gaullist in the beginning because it's clearly said that Gerbier is a Gaullist. Right after that, he befriends the young communists, and even later you have like the rich guy in the castle, which is Action Française, which is actually a royalist. So I think that's also
Mm.
a big part of what he's like trying to say about heroism is that even though Melville himself was known to be pretty much a conservative man. He was actually head of the ratings committee, which at the time was pretty much a
Seriously.
censorship committee, and he was known to be very harsh
Wow.
on what he considered to be pornography. Um, and yet, like from the first 5 minutes, you get that it's not like yeah. So it's like heroism was everywhere in every like creed and confession. So there is a sense of like putting it
Strange bedfellows
yeah,
in fighting
yeah.
fascism.
And very quickly to
Right.
say, like, the movie is not about, like, the inner conflicts, which were a huge, huge part of the discourse about resistance at the time in France. So choosing it as soon as, like, like, it's the first scene of the movie, to kick it out of the window and say, "No, no, it's not going to be about that," I think is a very, very strong choice and very, very actually, like, risky, which I guess is also maybe part of why the reception was a bit chilly at the time.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the French, when this film is shown in France, um, is the are the Germans subtitled? Because in the English in the American cut, the Germans aren't subtitled.
Good question. Because yesterday we actually watched the Criterion
We watched
version with
the
English
Criterion.
subtitles, and
Yeah.
I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly how it is. I remember that probably Signoret's phrases in German when they're in the hospital are subtitled. I'm not sure for the rest. Um,
But your relationship to German language is different from our relationship to European nation languages.
No, but
So,
well, I brought it up because I think it's actually if it was an intentional choice, I actually think it's kind of a cool one
mm,
where
yeah.
we keep we keep the Germans sort of mysterious. We hide them behind the lack of subtitles, and we keep what they're saying. Maybe we pick up a word or here or there if we know a little bit of German, but
yeah.
for the most part, we're perceiving it as the resistance members who probably know a little German but aren't necessarily fluent in it. So we're perceiving it the same way
Mm,
that they perceive it, which I think is a
yeah.
really smart a smart gesture. But I didn't know if that was something I was projecting onto it,
No,
if it was an
and
actual
I
choice.
I think anyway, like the movie doesn't really care that much about the Germans. Like for example,
Mm.
at the end
Mhm.
when Javier is arrested in the restaurant, which is that's what you were saying earlier about like the constant risk. He doesn't get arrested because he did like he only is arrested because he ate in a clandestine restaurant which was forbidden. So that
Mm.
and this time when he's arrested by members of the French milice, not by Germans. So I think Melville is really like putting also away like the questions of like Germans and showing that the antagonists are also French and Germans. So I think anyway, like the question of like German language and Germans in general, you don't have a single German character in the movie. So I think he's
There's
Nobody
also
named. No.
the one guy in the Lyon administration
yeah.
who's got the in the Gestapo place who's got like kind of a featured part, whose
Mm,
face looks like you could smooth rocks on it. He is just a chunk of a dude, but he's just fascinating. Melvi, he's just got just a really great um, eye for faces.
yeah.
And I think of this film, I think of Two Faces, but the other one is Simone Signore, and she she slays the fuck out of this movie, but she's also given a character who is it's kind of perfect casting. Like, of course, it would be her at this time. Um, but was she like, she was sort of regarded and was and like an older, like she was of the certain tendency films, right? She wasn't really like a part of the new wave, like kind of ethos at all.
No.
So her casting, like coming back around in this, which is interesting because we I brought this up last night, like the idea of having the really the two leads from Le Diabolique in this, and they never meet in a single scene, and you're just kind of like anticipating them. Like, am I just doing that as an American, or did they were they in like 50 movies together and I'm stupid? But yeah, she's just if she doesn't necessarily steal the film because she's not in a lot of it. You know, she's got that great kind of central scene of they're trying to save one of the other guys from the hospital who's been arrested and has like betrayed them, but they've gotten word of it. And otherwise, she's only probably in four scenes. But when I think of this film, I think about her a lot. I don't know if
Mm,
that's because I'm a gay man.
No, and it's also because the character so clearly, like, again, the whole final sequence is really about her,
Yeah.
and the other cell members respect her a great deal, and we get some voiceover from, the protagonist talking about how, how effective she is, and but the idea that again, I love how much of this movie holds back.
mm,
Like, as much
Hmm.
as much muchness as there is in this film in terms of, like, procedural and process and mechanics, it also withholds so much. We get a scene of her trying on different costumes that never come up again. We never see those costumes in action.
Oh my god,
Like,
it's so good.
yeah.
There's
did they
a
use them? Did
fucking
they use them and just
montage of
yeah.
costume changes in this.
Did they use them in a mission that we saw that happened
Mm,
off screen, we never saw it? Or did they she was she trying them on and discarding them and saying, "No, that's not gonna work?" We don't know, it doesn't matter. It's giving us a glimpse into, like, her character, her abilities, the methodologies of the cell. It's such smart filmmaking.
mm,
And I think the film I do wanna say that the film is overall, I feel like one of the reasons it leaves such an impression is not just the time and the place and the tension of it all, it's that methodology that what he leaves out, what he puts in, what he lingers on, the choices that he makes, the plotting itself, the fact that we begin with our main character being hauled off to prison before not in a place where he specifically he can't resist actively from within this prison. So what's the first objective? Get out of prison. um, the fact that again, as you said, that he's picked up the second time for eating at like an unrationed restaurant, like it's both so stupid,
yeah.
but it's stupid in the way that real life is,
Mm,
and that's what lends it that, authenticity, that feeling that we may actually be watching. I mean, the original novel is supposedly based on things that actually happened in the Resistance as well, but it gives it that lends it this, texture and feeling of realism that is so rare. I mean, the only thing I could compare it to, what leapt into my mind was David Simon, was the
mm,
Wire, in
Whoa,
terms of
that's blowing my mind.
but he has that
Not
same
because I
thing, right? Where
disagree. Yeah, yeah.
but he has that same touch where he like, the plots move in a way that feels real. Sometimes the people end up being killed or ratted out for the dumbest reasons. The the ebb and flow of the plot, it has that feeling to it, I
yeah,
think.
because it's not
But
dictated by movie logic, you know? And you were talking about
Exactly.
how great the first 20 minutes are, and I think it's a great example. You have this, like, perfect setup for an escape, you know, the guy is working the electrical counter and everything, and you're like, "Okay, sure, so next scenes are going to, like, cut the lights and escape." No, a car comes and grabs him to drive him to Paris. So and the movie is constantly like that, setting up stuff that what won't happen and won't be shown, and on the contrary, like, revealing stuff that's coming out of nowhere. So yeah, I think that's like it doesn't feel ruled by movie logic, which is
That's a great way to
very
put
rare,
it,
I
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
but but don't you think, and I've been really thinking a lot about this, the codification of anti-movie movies and how they become a new language
Mm,
and the way that Melville his his crime films or anti-crime films become a new genre where we're talking about like anti-heroes, or it's not about the mission, it's about the characters, it's not about the heist, it's about the particular like materials that you would use in the heist or something. It's there's something else happening too in his aesthetic that I know must have been born from production and him wanting to control it. But the other thing I think about when I think about his films is design. And yes, he does have, the kind of a kind of realism that you're talking about, Andrew, but I think it's buttressed by a high style too, that the marriage of these two things is what makes his filmmaking so thrilling to me. And whatever anyone wants to say about the plane, it just dangling in the air and people are just like blowing clouds or whatever they're doing, like to
Yeah.
make that shot. I think it's gorgeous. I
Yeah.
think it's so beautifully done. There's a shot with a lead character in a near the end where he's in the kind of safe house and he's got the door open and it's kind of a John Ford shot. It's kind of a searcher shot, except it's not in the middle, it's to the side. And the what's outside is like the most gorgeous kind of like impressionistic painting of doom and gloom out there. So there is a kind of like very movie
Mm.
stylization going on. And like you said, like he had such control, like he had his own studio that I don't know how much of that was purposeful or how much of it was kind of this is a question I think about when I think about Hitchcock a lot. Is like the aestheticization, how much of it is born from production and like let me do it the
Well,
easy way, it doesn't
the
matter.
fact that
I
you
know,
the
I know.
fact that you said Hitchcock, what thing I was just gonna point out is we can only be so authentic and real if we're making the choice to use reprojection in cars. Like, that feels
Yeah.
like a choice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there are I mean, I don't wanna say that this film is, like, super grounded and not stylistic at all. What I mean by that is more about plot mechanics and character beats,
Mm.
and as you were saying,
And how
Emile, like,
different it
the
feels from
non-moviness
Yeah.
of it all, yeah.
And at the same time,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
you're right about Melville's like having a studio and liking to control, but he actually shot a lot of practical locations as well. So that's why he was so
Yeah.
admired by the directors of New Waves. He was like one of the first to use as much as possible of practical locations, but combining it with the very because that's also because you cannot and I'm going to turn it back around, but you cannot separate Melville from American cinema. He was so obsessed and
No.
had like an encyclopedic knowledge of like B movies and stuff, and he basically knew a lot about as well French cinema. You were talking about casting earlier. At the time in French, you had no casting directors, and Melville would just for the entire cast down to the smallest part say, "Okay, I want this guy from this obscure French movie from like 10 years ago." And she was so precise about that. So I think that's also where this like very cinematic aspect comes from is that she really like was obsessed by cinema and movies in itself, but also at the same time, and I think especially regarding the subject matter and his personal link to it, was obsessed to not betray what he felt was the truth, was still because he also wanted to do like popular cinema, and he actually did like the Samouraï, L'Armée des Ombres, and Red Circle were like big success in French. I think like Red Circle was like 5 million tickets, which was huge by French
Wow.
standards. So that's where the tension comes from, and I think like this tension is also why he's such a fascinating filmmaker, and he's really like again I think really far from the very like rigid and austere like director that he's, and and that's why I always felt like the comparisons to Bresson were like a bit out of place because Bresson was much more rigorous and minimalistic, whereas there's a taste for like and the first shot of the movie is a great example. Like it's especially for a French audience, I guess the shot is it's like forbidden shot. It's impossible to
It
do
means
it.
a lot to us too.
Yeah,
I think like even just seeing that the striking like the Nazi march through
yeah,
through the Arc de Triomphe, like it means a lot. I mean, not as much certainly Parisians that's another thing I want to talk about is that living in France and like knowing these places now and like being inside these places, I didn't realize the great scope of the story of this and that, the flight over London back
Mhm.
dropping him back into France and like just the work that they were doing, that they were actually making such a huge network with so few resources is only, to their benefit. I could never do it.
Yeah.
Guys,
And
I
and the
I can barely take a train ride back to the apartment.
Well, they go to
I may.
London,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
again, some slight subversion of back to expectations or what we would get in a more traditionally, as you say, heroic narrative, Josh. They go to London and they get some of the things they ask for, but mostly they get a lot of disappointment. They get like, "Well, we can give you X, Y, but we're running low on resources now. I have other people committed over here to this. I can't give you what you want exactly." So, and then the whole thing has to be cut short because he's got to parachute back when he finds out one of his guys has been taken. So, like the whole thing, the whole London expedition. But we do get that great scene where they go see Gone with the Wind, which I think
Yeah.
is cute.
Oh
And they're
my
sitting, and they're
god.
sitting there
Thank you for
going,
bringing that up.
Yeah, France
They
will be
say
free when people will be able to see the movie, yeah.
once the French see this, the war and so, I wanna break that down a lot, okay? We're not gonna
Yeah.
spend too much time on it. But that Gone with the Wind is such a kind of eh, uh, conservative Confederate object that I see it as a kind of triumph of the will of for the United States. I feel that strongly about that film. And him saying that is like kind of goes along with his anti-movie sentiment. It's like, well, the kind of propaganda being maybe I'm just going down the wrong road. Maybe we shouldn't go
I
down
no,
this road at all.
I think it makes sense, but, I think also, like, it's the idea of going with the wind as a spectacle, I think, matters a lot to Melville. Is the idea that,
Mhm.
um once the French will be able to access like the grandeur because once again he was like obsessed with America, and I think like the
Yeah.
idea of when people will finally be able to access all this like all those movies that were not released and that were shot during like 1939 and 45, 44 at least, and were not released in the French at the time. I think it's more of like his own cinephilic taste talking. I think for a reactionary man in France in the 60s, the problematic, Confederate subtext of Gone with the Wind was not
They
a
would have
huge
missed that
question. Yeah,
because I just think it's so interesting because you could read it the other way too.
yeah,
It's like once if they saw this, they would accept it.
yeah.
And to me, that movie's a fascist
But
film. So
yeah, and
I-
yet and
I'm
yet I
I'm
and yet I also think that there is a sense of irony because, Melville being Gaullist and de Gaulle being very opposed to, American influence after Second World War.
yeah.
France is one of the only countries in Europe who don't have a military base, an American military base because of that. I think there is, and actually the entire French system was built as in to defend itself from as much as possible from American cinema. I think there is a sense of irony in that, as in like
Mm.
maybe there's maybe something said here about Melville's fear of for cultural hegemony. As much as he loved American cinema, I think as a Gaullist he was afraid of that. So yeah, I think there is and also because the translation in English is not exactly right, because there is something which is untranslatable. They say when people will be able to read Le Canard enchaîné, which is a satirical political newspaper, and see this movie, France will be free. Whereas the English translation cuts out the satirical newspaper part. So
Mm.
I think there's layers, but everything has layers. I think like nothing
Yeah.
is as simple as it seems because once again, like for Melville, everybody wore a mask, and it's always a question of like never being true. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. There's probably something in there that we weren't able to fully grasp. But yeah, I think it's much more complex
Well,
than
we
it
certainly
seems.
won't be able to do it in the hour. But one thing I think we need to do is Andrew and we're building a cannon. We've got what are we at 20?
19.
Really? Is
Mhm.
that with Killer of Sheep?
Oh, no, I haven't added Killer
Oh,
Sheep yet.
yeah,
So, yeah, with
because
Killer
I
Sheep at
haven't.
20. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so we're at 20. So the
Mm.
question is, I have 7 votes left. You have 8? Yeah. All right.
That
So
sounds right.
it's we're halfway through the year, but we know from last year that the latter half we speed run through a bunch of great films.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am willing to use my seventh vote or my whatever fourth vote of the year for this, but I might not have to if you agree that we need a second French film in the canon that
I
you
mean, that's just a general rule of thumb. We
I
need
think
more French films in
yeah, I
there.
think you need way more than 2, but, that's a start at
But
least.
I also wanna emphasize that this isn't a pity vote or something to put more French cinema in there. This is a mo
no,
this
we
movie
know.
blew my socks off too. So, like, I
Isn't
just
it?
saw this movie for the first time, and it was wild.
Well, the one
Yeah,
thing
great
that I
film.
have to say is like, you have films that, while you're watching them, you understand them. Again, this might be just stupid stuff that I'm saying that seems really obvious, but the accumulative effect of this film it just really hit me in the knees
Mm.
last night when it was over. It's just Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's incredible and it feels towering in ways that his other films don't, which isn't necessary to be, capital G great, but this does just kind of stand alone to me, even though I probably yeah, I definitely would put on another one of his films to rewatch. This is kind of difficult to watch, but all right. So it sounds like we're both saving votes, and Emile, you have suggested our 21st
Wonderful.
Yeah.
film. All right.
Great.
Okay, Emile, stick around while I try to recount what's in there. And feel free to verbally react if you wish.
Okay.
Okay. Andrew, is the list up? You got it?
Yep, I've got it.
I'm gonna grow to really hate this bit. Um Far From Heaven, No
Okay.
Country for Old Men, Taxi Driver, The Graduate, Rushmore, One Battle After Another. We didn't talk about One Battle After Another and this. Whatever. It's fine. Secret Agent and this. Damn.
Yeah.
Misericordia, we did talk about and this.
Yeah.
Um Suspiria,
Both?
right?
Both.
Both.
Okay, no, I'm not there
We
yet.
got a we
Yeah.
got a bit of a wince, and I won't ask him to explain because editor Ethan suggested the 2018, and I fucking agree. Anyway, Resurrection, Begon's Resurrection. Shit, here's where things fall apart for me. After Sun, Zodiac, Messiah of Evil, Welfare, Hospital, Man with
Mm.
Movie Camera, The Last Laugh, Irma Vep, Killer of Sheep.
Yeah, you did it. Awesome.
Yay!
We
Very
might be
good.
pushing the upper
Oh,
limits of your ability to do that.
3 French films. I forgot
Yeah, my
Irma
Vep.
Vep
Yeah, yeah,
is
my Vep. Yeah,
French,
yeah.
even though I think Irma Vep is of the world.
Yeah, I think it's like the most
That's how
it's
I
like the
kinda think of
most
it too.
worldwide
Yeah.
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
ever made,
yeah.
it's, yeah.
Yes. Misericordia and Army of Shadows, très français, très.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Emile Parseghian, thank you for coming on the show, having a
Thank
great
you.
conversation. And yeah, congratulations on being in the Take Up Canon. I mean, you were always going to be there, but now your film is there too. So,
Perfect. Thank you very much.
where can people find you? Do you want to promote anything
Instagram is the best
online?
bet, I guess. My username is actually taken from Phantom Fred. It's never cursed in one single word, which is the
Oh,
word.
speaking of
Nice.
films that belong in our
Yeah,
canon,
which is the words
Well,
that
we
he
will
he
talk about
embroids
it.
in the back of the robe.
Oh,
Um,
who are you explaining that to?
yeah, yeah,
Because do you know
and
this tattoo is because I went to go get my Never Cursed Did I tell you this? I went to go get my Never Cursed tattoo and I hated the mock-up the guy made. And I said, I don't want that.
yeah, but like actually, like 2 or 3 people over the years DM'd me and asked if they could buy my username, and I all
Yeah.
refused, even though I could use the money. But no,
Fuck.
no,
that
No,
is a pretty
fuck
good
that.
yeah.
yeah, you squat on that. Keep that
Yeah.
one.
Forever. Forever. All right. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Every episode, we run out with one more thing, something we've been loving since the last episode. Mine, I'm sorry. Well, we've got Emile on the episode. Maybe we'll have some French speakers, some other Parisians listening to the podcast. So this is a very specific thing. And so I'm sorry. This is for if you're in Paris, you must understand that Paris is a city of cinema and that it is very important. And there are almost literally 1 million cinemas in Paris. And a lot of them even dedicate themselves to repertory screening. Hmm. The website Paris-Cine Info has become such an important resource for me because it will show you over a certain time frame. It's really a database of showtimes in Paris, but you can also limit it by, oh, I don't know, films that are in English or also have English subtitles. You can do just for one day. You can do a certain time frame of a specific day. You can do a certain arrondissement. It's neighborhood ish. Um, and let me tell you, so this is just for the rest of the evening. Can I read you what's playing here?
I
Just
don't
in
know if I
English?
wanna I don't know if I wanna hear this because this
Well,
is
I'm
gonna make
gonna.
me jealous.
It's
This
gonna
is
make
gonna
it's this is just English, and we're talking about 7 p.m. on Paris, Texas, Interstellar, Silence of the Lambs, Thelma and Louise, Boogie Nights, Love Streams, La La Land, Obsession, The Curry Barker, Blowout, The Brian De Palma, Blue Heron, Andres and Eddie, like a lot of news stuff. Greg Rocky, Dune, Generation, Dunkirk, two Indiana Jones, and down way at the bottom, it's all sorted by rating. Is The Birds, To Catch a Thief, Minions and Monsters, Dune, Scary Movie, the new one, Permanent Vacation, but I can't go through all these.
crazy, and
That's
that's just
where
English
I'm
language.
living. Just English language. But anyway, it's such a really like if you're in Paris ever, it is the resource for finding out what is playing and how you can see it. It's how I stumbled upon a screening at the Cinémathèque Française of Hell in the Pacific in 35 millimeter and had just the best time
Ooh.
ever. So that's Paris-Cine.info. And then you can find me online at OK Josh Ray and all of us at the Take Up STL. And what about you, Andrew?
Well, it's been a busy week, and I don't feel like I have anything cool to talk about specifically, so I'm gonna do a take up a more abstract one more thing, as we sometimes do here, and just say
Pickles.
physical media.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Not pickles, but
What's
something
no,
physical.
not pickles. Not pickles, not alphabetizing, but physical media. I
You
am
will
not so
never
I'm
let the
actually
alphabetizing go.
no, I won't. I'm never gonna let you lay that down.
That's
Um,
fine.
so I am actually not, a huge physical media collector, and I say that as somebody who has, like, 2 cases worth of Criterion and video games and stuff, but, so I wouldn't say I'm obsessive, I'm not, against digital distribution, but this week, if you've been following gaming news, you know that Sony announced that they're not going to stop producing physical discs of games in 2028. They're just
I
not
did
going to make video
not know
games
that. I
anymore.
did not know that. That makes me want to
Yeah,
jump into the sun. I want to die.
it
That
does.
is
Yeah. So what this has done to me is like, and I'm a PlayStation god. Like that's my preferred gaming ecosystem, for lack of a word. So it instantly made me go, well, guess I'm not getting a PlayStation 6 someday
no.
because they're not even going to come with disk drives anymore. So just buy what you want. Go to used stores, buy used movies, buy used games, buy up everything you like. Don't worry about who's gonna get it all when you die. Just buy what you want
Don't worry
and
about
collect
how
collect
to
collect.
move it.
No, don't worry about that. Just get what you want. It sort of has. I've already been a person who really has enjoyed the PlayStation 4 and 5 generation in particular. And they're compatible. PlayStation 5 is backwards compatible, so you can play all the PS4 games on it. So I've spent a while building a library of PS4 and PS5 games that I love, and this is just gonna like now I'm just retrenching in that for the next 10 years. It's like, okay, I'm not getting the new shit, so I'm just gonna keep going back and building that collection of older shit. And it applies to films too. I went out and bought Army of Shadows basically as a blind buy alongside Memories of Murder, which I love, and don't regret it in the least. Like, now I have that great movie on Blu-ray, and it looks fantastic, and
Oh, you got the
I got it on
Criterion
sale.
sale right now. Man,
Yeah.
I miss her.
So anyway, that's I mean, obviously, it's the least original thing in the world for a cinephile to say, "Go buy physical media," but go get physical
No,
media. Use your libraries too. Use your libraries, use whatever resources you have to watch things on physical discs, to play things on physical discs when you can. Um, that's all I'll say about
if
it.
you're in St. Louis, Nickelflix is a great solution for used
Mm.
physical media. They have great, like, selection of kind of bargain bin stuff, but really kind of niche, and 4K and Blu-ray stuff. And if you're in France, well, there's a few things there too. I found a store the other day, Andrew, that is going to be very dangerous for me.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. But maybe that'll be a one more thing another time. Very cool. So physical media,
Yeah.
seconded here.
You can find
Um,
me on Letterbox at AWyatt76, and you can find my writings at thetakeup.com.
Very cool. Next episode, we have another guest. That's Isabel Roig. Am I saying that right? That's Isabel Roig, great artist and film lover. A film lover. She has a master's in cinema studies. So, yeah. I don't know what film she's picking, but it's going to be a great time. So back to back guests, and then we have more back to back to back back guests. We got full booking.
I
But
love it.
yeah, until then, thank you to Kayla McCullough for help with social media, Ethan Tarantella for editing and helping produce the show. Theme music by AMP. And yeah, until next time, bye.